All right, so I wanted to do a video today on this new bag I've got for my third line gear coming in and some of the things related to that. However, shipping is going to be a little bit delayed because of Monday's holiday, so I won't be getting that until about next week. So this week, because I am a medical preparedness YouTuber, I figured I should probably have a video out there on the CAT tourniquet and how to apply tourniquets in general. So I'm guessing most people on this channel know what a tourniquet is, and a lot of you probably know how to apply it. But I still see a lot of misinformation online about tourniquets, how to put them on, what products are available. So I want to clear a little bit of that up in this video. I'll have some follow-up videos down the road on tourniquet selection and some of the commercial brands that you should trust with your tourniquet. But for this video, we're going to be talking about the CAT tourniquet. Now, for those of you that don't know, a tourniquet is a band that constricts an extremity and keeps blood flow from distal to that extremity, so further down. This is a great help in cessation of really bad hemorrhage if somebody's shot or wounded on the battlefield or cuts themselves really badly. That's when a tourniquet's going to come in. We'll get into kind of the indications of a tourniquet later on in the video. So for a long time, tourniquets were seen as this kind of a scary procedure. You know, if you put a tourniquet on, they're going to lose that arm or leg, whatever it might be. And they've really found in not even recent years, since the 90s, that tourniquets are actually saving lives, and that there are very few instances of an extremity actually being having to be amputated because it's been in a tourniquet too long, at least in EMS and battlefield medicine. All right, so let's go over types of tourniquets and why I use what I do. So the combat application tourniquet is one of 3 commercial devices that's recommended by TCCC, so Tactical Combat Casualty Care, to be used for hemorrhage control. And the 3 that are kind of approved by them or vetted by them are the combat application tourniquet, the CAT tourniquet, the soft T and the soft T wide, and then something called the EMT tourniquet. It's really not that great, and I've never even seen one. So those are the 3 that are approved. I like North American Rescue, so that's what I have for us today. So what are some indications of a tourniquet? They're going to vary a little bit if you're on the military in a combat side, or if you're in civilian EMS or in a situation that isn't as life-threatening. So we'll kind of go through those, and this is similar to how the needle decompressions are, that it varies depending on where you are. So if you're in civilian EMS, you have somebody that maybe cut themselves with a chainsaw, there's no ongoing threat to life, then your indications for a tourniquet are going to be severe extremity bleeding that does not stop with direct pressure. So in that instance, you're going to take a gloved hand, maybe a little bit of gauze, and you're going to apply direct pressure over that severe bleeding. And usually that's going to be an arterial bleed, so bright red spurting blood. You're going to hold that pressure, and if that pressure doesn't work, we're going to move immediately to a tourniquet. So if you're in a combat situation, you have an ongoing threat, we're not going to stop and do direct pressure, and you're going to apply a tourniquet right away, whether that's a self-aid if you're putting it on your own arm or helping a buddy down there as well. Now, always remember that we're still going to try to neutralize the threat first and foremost, and then apply the tourniquet. But we don't want to delay tourniquet application if it can be avoided. So to apply a tourniquet, essentially you just need the tourniquet tight on the arm above the injury. So that's called proximal to the injury. That's closer to your body. So if somebody has a bullet wound through their wrist, let's say, then you're going to take this and you're going to put this a couple inches above the wrist, tighten it down, and you're good to go. They used to say that you don't want to put it on the lower arm, the lower leg, because you have 2 bones there, and it's not as effective as compressing. Now they're telling us that that's actually okay. In a combat situation, if somebody has long sleeves on, you're not quite sure where that wound is, we're not going to take a lot of time to expose the wound and then apply the tourniquet. Obviously, the tourniquet's always better on skin, but if you have to put it over uniform, that's okay. And in that combat situation, you're going to put the tourniquet in and on, and you're going to just put it as high on the arm or the leg as you can, wrench it down, and get it tightened. And then when you have time, when the scene's more safe, you can go back and expose the wound. So let's go through the specific steps of actually applying a CAT tourniquet. So to apply a CAT tourniquet, the first thing you're going to want to make sure is when you're storing it, it's stored in the appropriate manner. So it's folded up, and then you can just open it, and that can go around an extremity rapidly. You should be able to apply a tourniquet to yourself or a buddy in under 15 seconds. That's kind of the standard, and that's what you should be shooting for. So you're gonna take the tourniquet, you're gonna put it on the extremity, and as you put it up to the extremity, you're gonna go just above the wound. If you can see it, if you can't see the wound, you're just going to do high and tight until you get to a point where you can actually expose that wound. So once you put it on, you're gonna tighten the band as tight as you can on the arm. The biggest reason a CAT tourniquet fails is because that initial tightening of that strap is actually not enough, and then you can't turn the windlass enough to take up that slack. So you wanna make sure that first tightening is as much as you possibly can do. Once you have the tourniquet tight, then you're gonna take what's called the windlass, and that's the stick that actually pulls in the pressure of the tourniquet, and you're gonna start turning that. You're gonna turn that until the blood flow ceases and you no longer have a distal pulse on that extremity. Once you tighten the windlass, you're gonna notch that back into the holder provided on the CAT, and you're gonna move the strap over that all the way around to hold that in. Then there's a little white tab on the CAT tourniquet that you can pull over that opening. It holds the windlass in place, and it also has a place where you can write the time of tourniquet application.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Always make sure you note the time because that is relevant down the road. If it's been on for a long time, there's certain cocktails of meds that have to be given prior to the tourniquet coming off. And that's going to be important for the emergency room to know. And then it's also important that the tourniquet remains visible. A lot of these tourniquets are not this fluorescent orange that I'm using, and they're black or darker subtle colors, so you have to make sure that the receiving facility knows that there's a tourniquet in place. If you're in civilian EMS and you're not going to be using a tourniquet in a tactical environment, I honestly would recommend going with a fluorescent color. It just makes it safer for the patient. Once you have applied a tourniquet, it is important that you do not take it off for any reason. It should only be taken off by an experienced medical provider, sometimes a paramedic, mostly that's going to be a physician in the emergency room. If there's still bleeding after the first tourniquet's applied, try tightening the windlass again, seeing if that stops the blood flow, and if that does not stop that blood flow, then you can take a second tourniquet and place that on there as well, and that will stop the bleeding. If you do not carry a tourniquet in your kit, I highly recommend you get one. My personal recommendation is the CAT or the Soft T or Soft T Wide. They both work pretty similarly. You have some other devices out there that I'm not as big of a fan of, such as the RATS tourniquet. Don't try to make your own. I would highly recommend going with a commercial device. But ultimately, the best tourniquet is the one you have on you. So if the RATS is what you're going to carry on you, carry your RATS, I say begrudgingly. But I would recommend going with something that TCCC actually recommends, because those have been tested in the pre-hospital environment pretty extensively and have been found to be very effective. I want to make it pretty clear, I know that I talk a lot about a North American Rescue and certain other brands. I'm not paid in any way by these companies. I get no reimbursement from them. And I just want you guys to know that the reason that I talk highly of all the gear that I review on this channel is because I own this gear. I've vetted this pretty extensively, and I would not trust my life or somebody else's life to something that I didn't believe in, that I haven't done my research on. So if I seem like I'm a North American Rescue fanboy, it's because I've had a lot of their products and they've always worked for me. If in the future I ever am being sponsored by somebody, I will never take money to say a nice thing about a product. I will be happy to review products for a company, but I'm always going to be honest about it, because ultimately I don't want somebody going out on my advice and buying a product and having it fail, and then that coming back on me, because that's your life, that's your patient's life that's at stake, and I'm not going to compromise this on this channel. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up, have a couple cool gadgets in the mail. So I will see you next week for those videos.
Audio Jungle.